Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who's still reeling from the catastrophic failure of Face Novel. It's Phil Briggs.
Face novel. Yeah. Face novel. Oh man, face coffee table book.
Novella?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, face novella.
Face autobiography? Well, I mean, I guess it is Facebook. How many businesses have we failed in our history of podcasting that we've been doing this? Limos?
Yeah, yeah, limos, luxury yachts that were combined with a limo service.
Yeah, we just
Yeah.
have bad luck, man.
That's what it is. Clearly, it's just bad luck.
It's
It
not
has nothing to do
because
with the idea itself.
yeah, the amount of capital we put in the beginning that was bound to fail. Like our limo rides cost how much? 6 grand, but then we charge like 49.99 for a ride.
Yeah, but I mean, it was the cleanest limo you're ever gonna ride in. There's a DJ Roomba cruising around in the bottom of that thing, picking up all of the dust off of people's shoes. Like it was, I don't know. I don't know how that business didn't work out. Again, just oil prices, that sort of thing.
You know,
Costs a lot. It costs a lot to fill up a yacht's, gas tank these days.
yeah, and our tiger shark pet tank wasn't didn't it lasted about 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out that those waivers that we thought were ironclad, not maybe as ironclad. We were like, Eduardo, didn't maybe review the paperwork quite as closely as we needed to.
We probably should have just written like it's your fault if you swim with these tiger sharks. Like that's it. That's all we put in
That's
there.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you just like, what did you think was going to happen?
Someone's like, well, why'd you have it? Like, well, we never thought anybody would do it.
Yeah, yeah, we didn't anticipate. I didn't anticipate that one guy was going to put his entire face into the tank either. But people are just going to do unexpected things
We
sometimes.
had like an Oppenheimer slash social network trial for like 3 months because of that.
Yeah, and you know what? Aaron Sorkin could have made a courtroom drama about our business and the amount of court appearances that we've had to make as a result of all of the lawsuits from our various business
It
ventures.
was like Catch Me If You Can, but it's like we got caught all the time. So like our thing would just be court cases constantly, as opposed from running from like the cops and like how he just ran from Tom Hanks for years. We just keep getting caught constantly for bad businesses.
Yeah, they're just
But
like,
we're
oh, you
earnest
guys
about it though.
again.
But we're earnest. Like, it's weird. We're not trying to swindle money. They're just horribly planned businesses.
You know what? Like, I'm gonna go on the record and just say, like, Justin Timberlake's got the, $1 billion or a million. Or I messed it up already. $1 million isn't cool. I'm gonna say, you know what? $1 million is pretty cool. Our business, we would have been happy if our businesses could have been sold for like 20 grand or something.
I would have been happy if they didn't leave us in catastrophic debt.
Yeah, if we could have just recouped the millions of dollars that we had to borrow to put into those businesses, that would have been cool.
Yeah, like we went so deep in the debt that we couldn't even declare bankruptcy.
I mean, we shouted the word bankruptcy, but it turns out that nothing actually
Yeah,
happens.
like it doesn't work like that. So if you want
Yeah.
to hear about our businesses, listen to our collateral episodes. Listen to our what are the ones? Fight Club.
Yeah.
What else have we lost money?
Rounder
Rounders.
we
Oh,
did
yeah, we
rounders,
lost money there.
limitless.
Limit.
We thought that taking copious amounts of NZT would help improve our focus and our business acumen. Not so much.
It worked backwards with me. I was actually pretty smart going in. Turns out you were just giving me like speed.
Yeah. Limited. The movie that they're making you is severely limited.
It's like, wait, I've never seen this work backwards. Oh man, but hey,
You went from using 12, whatever the number is, 15% of your brain to like 8.5.
and you just were at 15 still. You're like, am I smarter?
Yeah. For me, it was just pure placebo effect. I don't know that was real. That was real NCT they were giving me.
I must have gotten like MZT or MGT.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I got
Hmm.
the knockoff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Bradley Cooper was taking Transformers. I was taking Transmorphers,
Yeah.
the knockoff of it. So, okay. Social network. You sent me a list. We're on social network. This is a humdinger. Like this is when you think of the 2010s, of the best movies of the 2010s, the most lauded movies of the 2010s, the most talked about movies of the 2010s. Social network is there. And the problem is, this isn't a problem, but you and I have talked about Fight Club, and David Fincher is is wild about his commentaries and documentaries. So there's commentaries, there's awesome documentaries. I've learned a lot. Trent Reznor did documentaries for this. Aaron Sorkin did a commentary for this. There's, every The Ringer's done 7,000 episodes about this. Just reading about this movie, like the people talking about the whitewashing of the casting of like Max Minghella, the
Hmm.
sexism of the characters. But then it's also Tarantino said it's the best movie of the 2010s. It has a huge IMDb rating, huge tomato meter rating, nominated for multiple Oscars. Everyone thinks it should have beaten The King's Speech. There's just so much out there about this movie. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the research and learning about it. And everything about this movie was to serve Aaron Sorkin's dialogue. Everything,
Yeah, 100%.
everything. Like David Fincher's like, I got a good script. But like to nail his dialogues, David Fincher had to be as meticulous as because what's crazy about Sorkin's dialogue? I feel like if you and I directed a Sorkin movie, it would destroy people's souls because it would just sound like people reading dialogue. Like we wouldn't
Hmm.
like it just you got even if the dialogue's great, you still have to like have it read with intent and purpose. So like Fincher, like he had to understand every single line and how they were delivered in this movie just to make sure that his Sorkin's dialogue was as perfect as possible. So
Yeah.
you and I'd have been like, yeah, it's good, and then we would have just, turned in, not the face smash, the face smash of Social Network, the movie, but
Yeah,
it's,
we yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
we wouldn't have done we wouldn't have had them doing 99 takes of the opening scene, I imagine. And you're so right. It's the combination, it's the perfect pairing of director, writer, soundtrack, just this unique, incredible soundtrack. And so of course, to me, like the dialogue is the story of this film, but it's the dialogue in combination with the structure of the story, the way that it's delivered, the soundtrack on top. It's a recipe for, like, I totally agree. This movie um, deserves the hype that it has received. It is easily one of my favorite movies of all time. And what's incredible about it is that we're talking about something that's happening early 2000s, but this is a story that lives on in society today. We're still talking about social media and this idea of life. Timberlake at one point has this line that we lived on farms and we farmed the land, and in the future we're going to be living on the internet. And that is largely what is happening in society today. That's becoming a reality. And so this is a movie that is largely about the birth of the transition into sort of this new world that we're living in, where so much of our lives are spent online. We're having this conversation right now on Zoom, and so to me, it's a story that is the beginning of essentially this new world that we live in now, and we're still talking about the impacts of the founding of this company and this whole new world. So it's incredible.
And it's also the age old tale of kind of the rise and fall. I mean, I'm not comparing it to Scarface. Like Mark Zuckerberg doesn't get blown up by drug dealers, but when you watch movies, there's always that rise and fall. And Studio Binder said there's like four different kind of endings. There's the bitter ending, there's the sweet ending, there's the semi-sweet, and then there's the bittersweet. So in this one, he got the bittersweet. He didn't get what he needed, but he got what he wanted. So this movie doesn't leave you on the nice thing about Social Network, it doesn't leave you feeling absolutely depressed. Like this isn't Blow, right? This isn't Scarface. You don't feel like you've just been punched by a Megatron with a brick. I keep going to Transformers, but it's just a yeah. I remember watching it in theaters and just the darkness of Zuckerberg's eyes, like the way Eisenberg was able to play him. It's a really different Jesse Eisenberg playing him in this role. And I guess what I do like is when you read about Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, they're like, normally when we make a movie, we want you to focus on our music. Like, but this one, our music has to serve the script. So if you're listening to Aaron Sorkin's dialogue and you're like, oh, that's a good bop in the background, that's not going to work. If you are watching this movie and you noticed the background production design and not the dialogue, that's a mistake. If you notice someone extra in the background not doing their job and that takes you out of the dialogue, so everything in this movie had to like we said service the dialogue. It couldn't be too flashy. Like when Eduardo was like, I was your only friend, he did takes of like, I was your only friend, like and that would have played false, and that's why he has him read so many times. And also, too, I just want to say, Fincher said that the average shot setup for this movie was like 20 minutes. He said he could set up a shot in this movie in about 20 minutes. So because they and also too, like the camera they shot on, they use a red. This is 2010. They use prime lenses on this. So I thought it was really, they use prime lenses on this, and they shot with the f-stop of 1.3. Do you know what f-stops?
No, you
Right.
gotta explain all this to me.
So like f stands for like the focal length of the lens, but so like I don't know, I'm gonna do some hand motions here. So like the lower the f-stop, the wider open you're shooting, the more light you can get into the sensor. So the higher the f-stop, the more the iris closes and you get less light in. It sounds counterintuitive. So the lower f-stop, more light; higher f-stop, less light. So they use these prime lenses. They shot wide open. When they went outside, they just use like neutral density filters, which are just, you just put it on the lens, which kind of like, so you're not doing anything in post, right? You're shooting wide open. You are putting the filter on to kind of dampen the light a little bit. And so you could capture as much light as possible. So their setups when they were inside, they only took 20 to 25 minutes because they're already absorbing so much light, having a full f stop. Does that make sense? Like all they were
Hmm.
capturing the light. And so when people are like, oh, they did 99 takes, they did 50 takes, it's if the you know what the longest part is? It's getting everyone there. It's getting the extras in the seats.
Hmm.
It's getting the lighting set up. Once you got them there, run that dialogue. Like the main point of this movie is the dialogue. So it's so, for me, it's counterintuitive to knock Fincher for 99 takes when you're there, you got the extras. If you don't get this opening speech right, these 8 pages of dialogue, you've missed your audience. You need overlapping dialogue. You need them to be tired. Like she's joking about the people in China. You got a 1600. They're talking about Roe. I mean, it's like a weird chess match, and then it has to end with him, just her calling him an a hole. So
Yeah.
you have to nail it. So you have to get the coverage. You have to do it right. You have to get the ambient noise. You have to keep the energy up. You have to tire them out. So when people are like, "Oh, he does too many takes," no, like Fincher sets up the takes, you're there, knock out the dialogue, get the coverage, get what Sorkin needs. So I don't know. I've always get annoyed a little bit when people go after him for his takes because
Mm.
he knows what he wants. And like he gets, like, you don't have to go back for reshoots, and it's budgeted into the schedule. If the setup doesn't take that long, you can knock it out. So I don't know. I just think it's, and like you said too, it's collaboration, right? We've watched Sorkin direct the Lucy movie. He directed what, Molly's Game. They're
Yeah.
good. They're good, right? But this is a collaboration. Like when you have I wish I can't think of something off the top of my head. But like when you have a beautiful collaboration between artists, they keep each other in check, right? But if you just have free reign on a movie, you wrote, direct, you produces, you don't have someone in your ear being like, hey, rein it back or figure it out. And so I think this was a really good synthesis between the two of them to make this.
I totally agree. And that opening scene, I'm really glad that you highlighted that one because it really does set the tone for the entire movie. That you've got this fast pitter patter back and forth, classic Aaron Sorkin right out of the gate. I'm a guy that listens to my podcasts at higher than 100% speed, and that's literally what this movie feels like. You're listening to a podcast on 1.5 times speed the entire time, just rapid fire back and forth, rabbit trail in one direction. And Sorkin, I love, he does this cool thing where like you were saying about the conversation about SATs, where one character will be talking about one thing and then kind of goes on a rabbit trail in a different direction. There's a little bit of a misunderstanding, and then they come back to understanding again. How do I distinguish myself among a population that all got 1600 on their SATs? And he's like, I'm talking about myself. I'm not, she says something like, oh, I didn't know that they wrote the SATs in China. I'm not talking about China anymore. I'm talking about myself. And it's just constantly moving in different directions. And that opening scene really sets the tone for like, that's what's going to happen throughout this entire movie. I wrote down a bunch of examples where there are these misunderstandings. At one point, Timberlake has his first scene, and they say, oh, the shoes on the other table, which is now turned, and there's like all this misdirection in the dialogue. And I don't know, I just love it. It keeps you on your toes for the full 2 hours just listening to these characters. I don't know, we've talked before about capable people being capable. These are smart, quick thinking, quick talking people. You know, just listening to the dialogue is like it's like a maze where you're running into dead ends and then having different directions. I just love it so much. This is one of those movies though that falls the category of, you know, I love this movie, but my wife hates this movie,
Yeah.
and her big problem with the movie is there's nobody that is that has any redeeming qualities. There's nobody in here that she's really rooting for, which is just not her jam. She really wants somebody. She wants a hero. She wants somebody that you can cheer for. You know, that hopefully will be victorious in the end. This movie doesn't have that. And so given that like none of these people are really redeeming, I don't know. Do you find like, yeah, like none of them are really glorified? Does that take away from the experience of watching this for you at all?
So you know what's interesting? I've always just admired this movie on a technical level. Like I never
Hmm.
connected to it. I never like there's a movie that I really connect to, right? Like there's movies you watch and just, you feel like your soul, like they know your soul. This one for me has always been on a technical level. I think Fincher, I think works wonders on the technical level. I think Aaron Sorkin's script. I mean, he won the Oscar for this. This script
Yeah.
cracks, man. This script pops. Eisenberg, Garfield, and like, I didn't know Andrew Garfield really at the time. I didn't know
Me
Justin
either.
Timberlake could really act. I knew Jesse from like Zombieland and stuff like that, and Squid and the Whale, so I liked him. But watching this was a different Jesse Eisenberg. I didn't know who Rooney
Hmm.
Mara was. And very much so like in Collateral, when Jada Pinkett's immediately likable, and you understand everything. Like Michael Mann worked hard at that. You immediately like her. Like Rashida Jones, like her moments were great. He brought in Fincher brought in Dakota Johnson because
Hmm.
he's like, well, if Sean Parker can get with Dakota Johnson, that means he's actually kind of smooth because Dakota Johnson's like the best. That's what Fincher said. But it's for me, this was never for like about connecting, because I don't think Fincher movies are quite cold, right? So for me,
Very
yeah,
cold.
so for me,
Yeah.
it's I've never watched a Fincher movie and been like, I connect with this. I just connect with the score, the shoot, like Rosamund Pike's performance in Gone Girl. I connect with the technicality of it and how that this is a movie about dialogue and how they captured it. So that's where my admiration comes in. It's never been there's I wouldn't say I love it. I wouldn't say, I own it. I bought it immediately when it came out, and I've enjoyed exploring it. And I think technically it's beautiful. I love the lighting of it, the editing. I mean, you learn about how they made this, and then like the Winklevoss twins, and technically it's great. But yeah, Fincher for me is someone I've always admired as a technician, and so for me, Social Network is just a great example of craft.
Yeah.
Does that make
It
sense?
it does, and because I was thinking about this and kind of again looking back through Fincher's IMDb and you know thinking about his movies, and the reality for me is like I this is a movie that I would go back and rewatch. I've probably seen this movie a dozen times. I've seen Fight Club probably a dozen times. The rest of his stuff beyond those two movies I find to be pretty dark and not necessarily even super rewatchable. Like again, all due respect to the guy, he's you know regarded as one of the great filmmakers of our time for sure, but stuff is just so dark. Like I'm not necessarily
Zodiac.
gonna, you know, Zodiac freaked me out so much. I've seen that movie one time and have never gone back. You know, Seven, such a creepy movie as well. And again, not that's if people like it and appreciate it and you know rewatch it because of of how technically strong they are. I totally get that. For me, you know, I'm an old dad now. I want to sit down on a Saturday night and watch a movie and be entertained and feel good coming out of it. So even though this is definitely Social Network is definitely still very much a cautionary tale, very dark, no characters with redeeming qualities. I guess there's just something about it, whether it's the Sorkin dialogue, the fact that maybe some of the material is a little bit more relatable given I don't know, I was in college around this time. I can remember setting up my first Facebook, you know,
When was that?
account and that sort
When
of
did you set
thing.
up your first Facebook account?
I I was a bit of a late adopter. I can remember I think I was in like my second year of university and pretty much everyone was on it and I don't know, I feel like some friends at the time were like, you know, kind of like almost peer pressured me into it. So something like probably 2008.
That's when I
was
did. Yeah.
probably when I set it up.
I moved to Korea and I was like, I guess I should keep in touch with people. And then someone told me that Facebook was a good way to do it. So I started Facebook just to
Hmm.
keep in touch with all the people I met. So like I had MySpace in college. I wasn't even on that too much because I think I had a dial up internet. But yeah, the first time I did was when I got like when I moved to Korea, I got Facebook. Just because like I should probably keep in touch with some of these cool people I meet. That was my
Yeah.
first time. But no, and I think there's something about social network where it can be a comfort watch because man, I'm telling you, like the speeches, like Justin Timberlake has never been better. He's just so slimy. You know what's interesting? Like I was reading about these guys like Eduardo Saverin. Like he just, he recently renounced his American citizenship so he didn't have to pay $750 million in taxes.
Oh
Like
wow.
Sean, like he was part of Spotify, Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, I take this movie as a work of fiction. Now I know that it's based on a book. I know Sorkin adapted it. It's an adapted screenplay, but like everything I've seen from Zuckerberg, he does not seem like Eisenberg in this movie. So when I watch it, like Sean Parker wiping the cocaine in his hair, and
Yeah.
like he was arrested for that, but it's just very fictionalized, I think. But it's
Yeah,
also
yeah. Even the idea that the entire thing started due to a breakup, with a girl and bitterness over that relationship. Whereas in reality, the real Zuckerberg was dating the person who is his now wife throughout the process of creating Facebook, right? So
yeah.
definitely, it's there's some Hollywood liberties happening here, but it very much is cautionary tale, a tragedy, an extremely well made story, but obviously with the truth stretched pretty much.
But it's the craft, man.
Yeah.
It's the craft. It's the cinematography. It's like that opening scene with Rooney Mara, right? She's bathed in warm light, and at the time she was a little younger, so she had like a little bit of a more of a round face. Like in a lot of film, when characters have like a rounder face that signifies kindness, happiness. And then you cut to Eisenberg, who's all angles, man. Like his jawbone, like the triangle, the way he's lit. Like you have this really interesting opening scene, right? And then throughout the Winklevoss race, like there's 6'5" and there's two of me. And like Justin Timberlake, man, like he's never gonna be better. Like I think he's fine in
Yeah.
other movies, but he's never like this role, like Sean, like, he's so good in it. And Andrew Garfield gets those moments to shine and all the character actors. I mean, in the commentary, Fincher was saying he just got whoever he wanted because everyone wanted, like Rashida Jones. She's awesome. She sat around as an extra for 2 weeks just so she could get a couple pages of dialogue.
Hmm.
You just have really excellent actors coming in, just knocking it out of the park. So yeah, I mean, I'm listening. Like this is a weird one, right? Like I can almost understand that people don't kill me, but I can understand why King's Speech beat it for Best Picture because you walk. So this movie has, what do we decide, as a bitter sweet ending, right?
Yeah.
It's not a bitter ending. It's not like semi sweet, but it's a bittersweet. So it doesn't leave you totally depressed. But King's Speech is like a sweet. It leaves you out like, oh man, he made the speech. He made the speech. Like you like, oh, he did it. Uh, and so you leave on that high. Whereas if you don't understand like the craft, if you don't understand like there's not like it. That's why Social Network is so weird, right? It made 200 and something million worldwide,
Hmm.
96% tomato meter score. People adore it. It's scored high everywhere. Yeah, it doesn't, but it doesn't have like the highs and lows of Scarface or Blow, right? It doesn't feature like when he falls at the end, he's still a billionaire. Eduardo's still a billionaire. Uh, Sean Parker's still a billionaire. The Winklevoss strings are still rich, and they're $65 million richer. Like no one leaves this move. Like it just, and since it's fiction, like, you have Zuckerberg all on his own, but he's rich, like
it
and he's
it reminds me a lot of some of the other movies that we covered, like where I think about like The Prestige, for example, which we talked about being largely about two people that are so ambitious that they are willing to sacrifice their entire lives, all of their relationships, like leave people, for dead essentially along the way in order to achieve their to satisfy their ambitions and achieve their goals. And this movie is very very similar to that, right? And so for all that, yeah, everybody ends up rich and powerful and that sort of thing. um it's at what cost? That I was your
Like,
only friend
yeah.
line is just so powerful, right? And so, um, yeah, it's obviously super rewatchable, but maybe not a super feel good story.
Yeah, and but you know what though? Like, Zuckerberg, like the way he pursued greatness and what he wanted, and I feel like everyone's road to greatness, like, I feel like Damien Chazelle has made a life off of that with La La Land and Whiplash. Like the
Hmm.
pursuit to greatness, you do alienate people. You will lose people. Like for every like Cristiano Ronaldo, right? Getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning, stretching, playing, stretching before the game, stretching after the game. His body is a temple. Like you have to make a lot of sacrifices and you probably do have to lose some people along the way. I'm not saying it's great, but I do think like that's why I don't get jealous of some of the richest, most successful, best athletes because like how much work they put in. Like
Did you ever watch?
I
Did you ever
haven't put
watch
in that work.
the last? Did you ever watch the Last Dance, the
Oh
Michael
yeah,
Jordan
it's
documentary?
absurd how much work Jordan put in that whole team. Like it's
But also how crazy
yeah,
that guy was,
yeah.
man. Like the way that guy treated his teammates and his family at the single-minded pursuit of excellence in his field. Just
Well,
yeah, that tunnel vision.
how do you get there? You know what I mean? Like how the best do that. Like you have to become almost brutal, right? Like, and that
Mhm.
was a oh man, what a documentary. Made me want to watch it again.
Yeah.
But it's
It
it's
really is incredible.
and so you watch this movie and and it's kind of nice that there's no death in this. There's kind of nice that there's no he became broke. It's kind of nice that this isn't like the story of Sean Parker tells the story of Victoria's Secret. The guy sold his company for $4 million and he killed himself later on when it blew up. Like there's sadness to it, but it's not like a Citizen Kane. It's not like a it's yeah, he's still existing. He's still doing I think, at the end, Zuckerberg tries to do the friend. In this world, he tries to do the friend connect to Rooney
Mhm.
Mara, and he when he talks to Rashida Jones, like I think you don't leave this movie without hope. Like they're just friends that and you know what the tough thing is, like Eduardo and Mark in this movie, you never spend much time with the two of them. Like, sometimes like, oh, I read your blog but you're never with the two of them alone long enough to really love their relationship. And like when it collapses, it doesn't hit as hard because you never spend as much time with them. I think it's just the overall idea of him ending up alone. So for me, like I said, man, watching this movie, I'm like, this is cracking. This is good. But there's movies like Take Shelter that I bond with. There's movies that I feel, but this one I think just the craft of it and just
The craft.
yeah,
For,
yeah.
for sure, for sure. So let's break down some of the specifics. Like what would you say? Like what are some of your favorite scenes in this movie? What jumps to mind for you right away?
Well, I just want to say how hard it is to you have a script this good. Some people make a joke like Andor. I think that's one of the best written shows, and someone made a joke like it's director proof, like because the dialogue is so great.
Right.
But no one rested on their laurels. Hey, we got a good script. We'll be fine. You can tell movies that aren't that great when they're just like, we got a great idea, but that's it. Like, we don't think beyond that idea. And so for me, when you're watching this movie and like you can just feel Fincher, but you can also feel Sorkin and just the collaboration. So like when Mark is
Mhm.
talking, right? When he's like, you have the barest minimum. You have like I like if you think I think if your clients want to sit on my shoulders and call themselves tall, they have the right to give it a try. But there's no requirement that I enjoy sitting here listening to people lie. You have part of my attention. You have the minimum amount. The rest of my attention is back at the offices of Facebook, where my colleagues and I are doing things that no one in this room, including especially your clients, are intellectually or creatively capable of doing. It's what's best too is sometimes dialogue I hate when dialogue reads as precious. Like, remember post Tarantino, how many post like Tarantino esque movies we got that felt fake?
Yeah.
Like you just felt the Tarantino and you're like, get off of here, get out of here.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
get out of here. Like this movie, I don't think it's precious. And so when they delivered these lines of dialogue, I don't. Does that make sense? Like I don't feel
Y-
it. I don't get annoyed. I don't feel. Oh, listen to that dialogue. I'm like, this is good dialogue. It and that's
Yeah.
hard.
These are super smart people.
Yeah.
And so like the idea that these people would be able to articulate these kinds of thoughts this clearly with this much intensity I don't know. I mean, I've chatted with people that work in the tech space. A lot of them are very driven, type A, intense people that talk fast, think fast, type and code quickly, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, you don't feel the dialogue. This feels real, in a lot of ways. Yeah, I think it's perfect.
And like Sean Parker, when he's like, "Hey, do people show off their picture of 14 mackerel or one gigantic, trout?" It's you take a picture of the 3,000 marlin, 3,000 pound
Mhm.
marlin, not the 14. What is this? 14 trout.
14
Yeah,
trout.
yeah.
Yeah.
You take a picture of the 3,000 pound marlin, and like when people are hustlers like that, like I've met hustlers before. That's the way they talk. Like, and they do win people over, and I think art. Like, what's interesting too is like the best thing this movie does is at some point Sean Parker has a point, right? He sees the potential, he sees the coolness of it. Remember Facebook back in the day? There was a EDU, like it's cool, right? You're in
Mhm.
school, it's exclusive. But then he's so slimy. You can just feel the slime in this movie. You feel the slime just oozing off of him. And so I think Eduardo, who brilliant guy, he can make $300,000 predicting weather, but he was a little bit misguided in his attempts. And then you have Mark in the middle, who when the jealousy over the Phoenix Club, then he also when he cut the bank account, he's like, okay, I got to make some moves here. And then when Sean Parker had him taken out, he's like, okay, well, I got to become the boss here. And so none of these guys are great dudes. The movie never even tries to imply that, but none of them are pure evil either. There's no absolute caricatures, I would
Well,
say.
yeah, the video that you sent me, that broke down again this being a bittersweet ending, talked about the fact that ultimately one of the fundamental things that's happening in this kind of story is that the main character believes a lie of some kind. And so the lie that Mark believes is that he needs to get into these exclusive clubs because they are what's going to lead to a better life. And he has to do something big and impressive in order to attract the attention of these social elites that otherwise would not pay attention or give credit to a guy like him. And ultimately I think the movie depicts that as being a lie. And Sean Parker is someone that represents that lie, and portrays this image of living a better life and being successful and being able to thumb his nose at these people that are looking down at people like him and people like Mark Zuckerberg. And ultimately, though, that turns out to not be true, right? And so I think that that's one of the really neat things about this is that it's these characters. We love stories where the characters are flawed. The hero, the main characters, if you will, or the heroes are flawed in some way, right? Again, we go back to Fight Club. Like we have Jack, we have Edward Norton, who believes a lie throughout the majority of the story, doesn't have the right perspective around what's actually happening around him. That's a big part of what's going on in this story, and it's just such a neat way to tell a story.
Yeah, and listen, the story's been told many times before, but the way that they're able to, and also too, like I admire movies that can make boardroom scenes exciting and pop, and find the angles for it, because I've sat in rooms, I've worked on the coverage, right, and it's boring. But to keep that up and to find a way of people in boardrooms talking and to make it interesting and not overly Sorkined, like Sorkin could easily become Sorkin esque, like ways if so. I just admire that about what they did here. And one question for you. So at the end, Rashida Jones says, like, you're not a bad dude, you just try to be one.
Mhm.
But everything we've seen about calling the papers with the chicken and calling the cops and what he wrote about Erica and he they're like, you're not a bad dude, but they never show him ever being a good dude ever. So when she says that, I didn't like that line because I feel like we were never that's my one false moment because it's trying to tell us how to feel. And I did not agree with that. Like I don't know from what we've seen at all of Zuckerberg that he's a good dude.
Is it just that he wants what we all want, which is he wants to be loved, he wants to be accepted, he wants to feel like he's good enough, like he's making a difference in the world. And in some ways, because he feels like he doesn't have that, or he's not getting that, he's essentially lashing out in all kinds of different ways. He doesn't trust people. He's betraying, people along the way. I don't know. I relate to that a little bit, I guess, in the sense that he just wants what we all want. He wants that love and that recognition. But because he feels like he's not getting it, he's a bad dude as a result. What do you think about that?
So he's not getting what he needs, and so like, but I mean, with Erica though, like he's bad to her. Like I don't think he's ever asked her about her day ever.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and when she makes him mad, he goes and lashes out against her and really hurts her. With the Winklevi, when they bring him to their club, but they only take him to the coat room, he's like, "You're done." Like I think at that point, he's like, "You burned me. Like you didn't show me my respect." So then he never calls back and he takes her idea. When Eduardo gets into the Phoenix Club, when he takes the money away, I think he's done with him. When like, it's I don't know, like I think he is angry at the world. He can't row, right? And he can't sing. And he's not a physical specimen. Like he got really hurt by that rowing comment. And then he got really hurt by the people not taking him into further into the club. He's mad about not being in the Phoenix. So I think he
Well, and
just
they tell him, hey, working with us on our website idea might help rehabilitate your image. And Eduardo, says in the deposition, he didn't want to rehabilitate his image. He wanted to burn these people to the ground. He wanted
yeah.
to burn these institutions that they represent, to the ground, and build his own, and that's what he tells Eduardo, right? It's going to be like our own final club, but we get to decide who's in. We're going to be the ones running it, right?
Mhm.
That's really the allure to him in creating this.
Yeah, and it's interesting since Eduardo doesn't need it. He made the 300K on weather.
Well,
He's part of the
that's
club.
one of my small nitpicks. Like, he's asking at one point for like a $200. Like I don't know all the technology. Apparently, this is another cool thing about the script in this movie, that all of the working on computers and all of the hacking. Again, I don't know this, but I've been told from people that would know, apparently, that the hacking and the technical aspects of whatever he's doing on the computer are pretty legitimate. And they asked for, he asked for some like $200 piece of equipment, and Eduardo really had to think about it after making 300 grand in oil
Yeah.
filters.
And then he's like, "Yeah, I'll give you 18,000." And it's kind of
18,000 plus the 1,000, which equals 19,000. And if you want to check my math on that, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I wish I knew how to explain that. I mean, I do think I mean, he was kind of mad that he went out to California, so maybe he was trying to control the
Mm.
situation with his money. And then does that make sense? Like he was maybe if they stayed back in Boston, he would have funded more because they're not in California uh, with Sean Parker. It's a yeah, that's the one part I think I haven't really thought about. But I mean, maybe he's paying for his own tuition. Maybe he's no, I don't
Yeah.
think so. I mean, he's at Harvard. But yeah, I don't know. And like they're kind of making fun of his suits. I'm like, yeah, but he made 300K. So it's
He he also is he also ultimately, I don't know whether this is vindication. Again, I don't totally know how this all shook out in real life, but ultimately in the story, like Eduardo's argument is that they should be allowing advertisers to advertise on Facebook in order to monetize the site. And ultimately, the reason that Facebook is worth, or Meta is worth, whatever, almost $1 trillion now, is because they are the one of the largest advertising platforms in the entire world. So ultimately, I mean, maybe Mark knew that, and it was more a question of the timing. We got to wait until we have a certain amount of
enough.
users and it's cool enough and all of that. We don't want to make it not cool with ads too early. But ultimately it's, the advertising thing does end up obviously happening at some point.
Parker Posey tells a story. She's like, I was the country's it girl for independent movies until an article about me being the queen of independent movies came out. And then I became just not the queen of independent. So, listen, I mean, Facebook was cool, right? Remember when people, the EDU, like you had to have the college thing, like that's how you get in. It was exclusive, right? It was young. So, yeah, you
Mhm,
don't want Hank Socks on there.
mhm.
And I think you're right. I think he wanted to blow it up to where it is, get the algorithm, sell data to people, make that money,
Oh man.
advertise. And so, oh man, the sponsored stuff. And also like sponsored, like people pay to have their Facebook posts more visible, but that's still advertising because they're paying for it. So I think he wanted to find a way to not make it uncool immediately. And it
Mhm,
succeeded, right? Like I think his instincts were right there. And I think Eduardo was looking at it not in that way. And I think that's where Sean was right. But you get Sean, like, what's like, I feel like Sean's one of those guys where even if everything's perfect, he's still going to mess it up. Like, he's a billionaire now and he just bought like a $95 million chalet. No, or was that? No, that was Eduardo. Like, Sean was he helped Spotify get started. He was like on the Spotify board for 7 years. But in this movie, not in real life, I feel like in this movie, he's just going to mess up anything. Like, he's that dude. Like, even if it's like, hey man, like our boat's running good, he'll just poke a hole in it. You're like, why'd you
there
do that? Like what? Like now it's water's gonna slowly trickle in. Like, like why? He's like, I'm a scorpion, like I'm gonna mess this up. So
Yeah, he's
it's
one. He's clearly like a super smart, immensely talented guy who just kind of can't get out of his own way
yeah,
in some respects. It is interesting. There are some parallels I think with the way he's portrayed and real life. There's a cool article from many years ago that came out probably in and around like after this, just after this movie came out, profiling Sean Parker. I think it's in Vanity Fair, and it talks about how he in real life he's a little bit flaky and hard to work with, very much a visionary, very smart, fast talking, just like he's portrayed in the movie. But they talk about how a lot of his coworkers would do this thing where they call it trying to war dial him, where basically when they were just trying to get a hold of him, they would just keep hitting redial on his phone over and over and over again. They'd call him 45 times until he finally picked up the phone, because he's notorious like for disappearing for days at a time and just never answering his phone. And so they would just like when it was super serious and they needed to get in touch with him, would just desperately call him over and over again.
jeez Louise, that sounds horrifying. But
I
like,
couldn't
oh,
imagine working in a job where that kind of thing is happening for sure.
Timberlake plays him great, right? He plays him well, but this movie also is so fiction that it's like you read about what happened in real life, but then you're also kind of like, well, a lot of liberties were taken on this. I don't know. So
Which
I
I think
don't.
is fine. I think it's
Yeah, no,
fine.
that's fine.
It's
Yeah,
an incredible movie. It's an incredible story, and it doesn't have to like if a criticism of this is not very historically accurate, I think that's kind of that's lame. That's not no one should be watching this movie nitpicking the historical accuracy or watching it to try to learn about what happened with Facebook and the invention of it. They should enjoy it instead for the story, for the performances, for the soundtrack, for the directing, for the cutting back and forth, between the deposition and the scenes that are, taking place throughout. Like it's just an incredible standalone movie. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's not totally historically accurate.
and like, it's like people watch these shark movies and they're like, you know what, a shark would never do that. I'm like, yeah, because it's a genetically modified super shark. Of course, it wouldn't behave like a shark. So yeah,
Yeah.
but that's a cottage industry, though, man. People are like, how historically in like truth versus fact or truth, like
Mhm.
like what's fake, what's not. Like that's what people read, and I hate it. But it's you got to respect the game, right? Like that's what gets read. But whenever I
Mhm.
see those articles, I kind of die a little bit inside. You know what my
Mhm.
main thing is? Though? I was listening to the commentary, and he was talking about Max Minghell's character Divya, and he was like, "Yeah, like we were looking for an Indian actor to play the role, but I didn't think any of them were that smooth."
Hmm.
So then he's like, "Well, he looks kind of light skinned." So then he just cast Max Minghella, in the role. I was like, did you just admit that on a commentary, David Fincher? Like that's it.
Yeah, that is a bit strange. I like the performance. I think that Max is really good in the
Well,
movie,
Divya
but
liked it too, but he's like, it was weird. He's like, yeah, I just couldn't find anybody smooth enough. So I'll just get like this dude. So I was like, that's I don't know. I didn't like that's the one thing where I kind of went, hey Fincher, come on, man. Like, I don't know. I don't know what you think about that. Like you just there's nothing to say, right? Because it's not right. But it was just odd that he's kind of like he puts all this work in. He's like, yeah, I just didn't think anybody was smooth enough to do it.
I don't know if off the top of my head I have anybody to suggest as a replacement, but yeah, certainly it is a little bit strange. But again, it is one of those things too where if this isn't if the if we're agreeing that the historical accuracy is not super important, then I guess it doesn't necessarily matter if that might maybe it's more important. I'm not sure. I mean, there are obviously characters that don't even exist, right? Eric Albright is a completely
Mm-hmm.
made up character that ends up playing a very pivotal role in the story. Rashida Jones, is probably like an amalgam of people that were around. I'm sure he had lawyers and things supporting him throughout. But, is her role really that important, to the historical telling of the story? No, she's
there to sort of represent the audience and react to some of the things that are happening and to push the story along. So I don't know. I definitely it is a strange thing for Fincher to say for sure. You would think that they could probably find a
One
great
person.
Indian actor, you'd think they would be able to find somebody, but
Like all the work that all the 99 takes that he puts in, he's like, yeah, I just like I couldn't find. I was like, that's a weird one there, but like it was 2010 still. Like Hollywood still has a very long way to go. I mean, this is years before Aloha, where Emma Stone played a Native Hawaiian,
there
and
you
you're
go.
it's just I Hollywood's oh yeah. I mean, I'm not just what's interesting about Hollywood, man. It's kind of like it's a business, right? Like this movie had to fictionalize the events to make money. Like if this was I love I think Blackberry's incredible. $5 million budget, awesome Canadian production, man. Like beautiful movie. But
I still need to see it.
it's never gonna make the money that Social Network made because it's very close to what happened. It's very but then
Mm.
you can't do this with Social Network. Like a lot of these conversations you never heard, like a lot of the stuff they pulled from his blog. To make $250 million, you have to Sorkin it. You can't just does that you know what I mean? Like you got to Sorkin it. You got to Fincher it. You got to
Yeah.
go that far. But once again, man, like this is a movie that I don't think I ever connected with. I just technically speaking, man, geez Louise, like just watching them shoot on the red, right? That was the hot thing back then. Watching how the prime lenses, learning how they shot, like everything was 20-25 minutes to set up, and just it's a lot of work. And like Trent Reznor's score, how it doesn't, it can, what's interesting what he said about his kind of Mark Zuckerberg's theme in the beginning when he's running, when the piano kicks in, is that they said that it's childlike, but it's very angry. It was a
Mm.
really interesting thing for Atticus Ross and Reznor to say that there's a childlike, but it also has an angry aspect to it, and that's cool. Like that's why a lot of people are like, oh, like movie bros love this movie. I'm like, no, people should just like this movie because of the technical aspects of it. Like it's a good movie. Tarantino, he doesn't like Ebert said it was his best movie of 2010. Tarantino loves it. The Ringer loves it. I think people who know the craft admire it. Yeah.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And I'm such a big dialogue guy. I'm such a big Aaron Sorkin fan too. Like, have you ever watched, did you ever, like, did you ever watch The West Wing? Because that to me, like, you want to talk about prime Sorkin, like some of his shows too. The West Wing Sports Night was really good. I've never seen The Newsroom or Studio 60. I'm just such a huge fan of Sorkin, man, and his dialogue. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I didn't know Sorkin. I really I probably had watched his movies. So like I knew he did Few Good Men. Like he wrote that, but that's about as far. Like I was a movie Sorkin guy. I was never like he wrote what Charlie Wilson's War. I knew about that. I knew that he like Moneyball. I knew he wrote that. Which Moneyball? Holy crap!
So good.
Get out of here. But
Yeah.
that's like, but also too like he's the only person that can make Moneyball make money, if that makes sense. So it's I never watched. I heard bad things about Newsroom, though. I heard it was just kind of Jeff Daniels pontificating. So I just never
The
watched it.
if you were gonna check out a show, The West Wing is honestly like whatever we are 25 years later after it came out. I don't know. Maybe not everybody will agree with this. My wife and I love that show. We actually went and bought all of the DVDs. Like so, we have every season. We've probably watched it the whole way through at least 5 times, and it really represents a time maybe that wasn't real, but like just politically, there is so much hope and optimism in that show again, and it's smart, capable people being smart and capable. You talked about like Sorkin having the ability to make people sitting in a boardroom interesting. This is people crafting political documents and economic policy and things like that, but it is thrilling, it is fascinating, it is an incredible ensemble cast that are walking around the building talking at 1.5 speed. So if you get a chance to check out The West Wing, I think it'd probably be worth going back and checking out.
Can we do something real quick? I want to do I just want to run some things by you here because we have a draft. But so I went through and I was like, this movie's got to be top 5 in a lot of lists. But I went and I pulled all the top 5s from various websites and box office, and like I want to see which one you prefer the most. All right.
All right, I'm ready.
So from 2010 to 2019 on Letterboxd, their top 5 is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Parasite, The Handmaiden, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and Whiplash. Metacritic is Boyhood, Moonlight, Roma, Parasite, 12 Years a Slave. IMDb top 5 is Inception, Interstellar, Whiplash, Django Unchained, and Parasite.
If anybody's familiar with in my past episodes of movies, films, and flicks, you already know which list I'm gonna go with.
Yeah, so I knew your IMDb. I'm Letterboxd because I think Portrait of a Lady on Fire and The Handmaiden are like incredible. Park Chan Wook, Celine Sciamma, like they're incredible. But yeah, I mean, but also you have Boyhood though on Metacritic. You have Parasite,
Boyhood was really great. But I need to
Moonlight,
go
like,
back and watch Boyhood again.
and then the 5 highest grossing films of the 2010s are Avengers Endgame, The Force Awakens, No Way Home, and Jurassic World. So Avengers Endgame, and Avengers Infinity War. So Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, Force Awakens, No Way Home, and Jurassic World. Those are the highest grossing films. But
Yeah.
if I man, I gotta if I could do like a what's the word? If I could do a mishmash of all these lists combined, I would do Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Handmaiden, Interstellar, Boyhood, and oh man, probably Spider-Verse because of the animation. That would be my 5.
Yeah,
I like that.
a lot of movies have really copied that animation style. I saw the new Ninja Turtles movie a few months ago, and it blew my mind, man.
Yeah.
The animation.
Like, they told Sony, they're like, we're going to change animation. They're like, okay, go change it. And then they're like, oh crap. And then they did. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
they
It was a
did.
gamble. And listen, I love all these movies. I'm not saying any of them are bad. This is like saying something's more awesome than something that's awesome. But yeah, I just love Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's like one of the best looking movies ever made. And The Handmaiden, like Park Chan Wook's probably one of my favorite directors of all time. So, and then hey, so I put together a top 5 of mine from 2010 to 2019. You want to hear it?
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
Okay, so Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Take Shelter, which is one of my favorite movies ever made. The Raid, 2011, one of the greatest action movies ever made. The Act of Killing, which is one of the most gnarly documentaries ever made. And then for 5th place, I have Columbus, Black Hole Daughter, Decision to Leave, Night Comes for Us, Crawl, The Guard, Only God Forgives, Mandy, Green Room, Revenge, Interstellar, and In the Spider-Verse. That's my number 5.
Yeah, nice. Only God Forgives, eh? I gotta check that out too.
It's mean. It's very mean, but
That's
it's
the same guy who did Drive, right?
Yeah.
Him and Gosling again.
But it's so
Yeah.
mean that people who like Drive went, like it's
Okay.
like it's and
Oh,
Drive is
interesting.
gnarly. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's I don't know, man. Like I like The Raid, I think is one of the greatest action movies ever made. Take Shelter, the theme of it, like Jessica Chastain, Michael Shannon, it's a gorgeous movie. But this was all, dude. And then okay, so we have a draft now, right? We're gonna do. Do you have any more questions for me?
Yeah, I guess my last question would just be going back to Social Network. Of all of these amazing performances from these actors that are capturing this Sorkin-esque dialogue, which one is who gives the best performance in your opinion?
I mean, gotta be Jesse Eisenberg because, you know, you watch Zombieland, right? You watch Squid and a Whale, you watch Adventureland. This is a different him. It's
Mhm.
very, very, very good. This is, I love Andrew Garfield in it, but he gets more of the emotion, right? He gets more of, he's able to kind of exist. I think Timberlake's good, but man, Eisenberg just like does it. He just does it.
I agree. I think it's Eisenberg as well, but I will say I wondered with Justin Timberlake. It had maybe been a couple of years since I'd watched Social Network until we decided to do this movie, and I thought, am I gonna like, is this performance gonna hold up, or am I gonna look back and go, okay, it was Justin Timberlake kind of having like, like obviously big superstar, very famous guy, but like this was very much like Justin Timberlake's moment, and I gotta say, like he is maybe the quick like this is quick dialogue, and he's maybe the quickest person with the quick dialogue, if you know what I mean by that. Like it's like, hey, we're gonna do sprints on a treadmill for the next 2 hours, and that guy can sprint as fast as in this movie.
And you watch every other movie with him in it, like Runner and all these other films. He's not. It's nowhere near as good. But
How you want to talk about though a recipe? Okay, so Koppelman and Levine, uh, Justin Timberlake, Ben Affleck. Like, how was I saw Runner in theaters and it was absolutely horrendous.
yeah,
So disappointed.
bad. Which is,
Just bad.
but here's this is Aaron Sorkin and Fincher. You're
Yeah.
gonna step your game up, and also I think sometimes you see people cast in a role they're just perfect for it.
Yeah.
They're perfect for it. And also, I mean, like, Fincher was there to calibrate, right? Fincher was there to catch him. Sorkin was there to catch him. And you could tell that he cared a lot. Timberlake cared a lot for
Yeah,
this.
he was the only person that I guess was either allowed to or went and actually met the person that he was portraying before they actually filmed the movie. Everybody else was banned from doing it, but I don't know. I guess they let Timberlake go and meet the real Sean Parker, who basically told him, you know, meeting me is not going to help you play this character that they've made up, because it's not the real me anyway.
Yeah. What sucks too is I wish, like, The Crown. I feel bad, but like The Crown had to do
Oh,
this thing where it's like, this is not true. This is fiction. Like they had to put the disclaimer because everyone was believing it as the
yeah.
truth. And I think relative, and like with Fight Club, right? People shouldn't take after Tyler Durden, right? So
No.
Fincher should not be blamed for that. No dude should be like, that's my guy. Like, oh, snowflakes. Like, that's not his fault. Like, he shouldn't have put more of a wink in there. So I don't think it's Fincher's fault that people don't realize that this is a work of essentially fiction, right? It's
Mhm.
nonfiction, but it's fiction. So I never took it as like that's who Zuckerberg is in real life. But Zuckerberg has said that like a lot of people think that's him. And so it's
Mhm.
kind of tough, right? That but I mean it's not Fincher's fault, it's not Sorkin's fault. But yeah, like when they're like, it's a work of fiction, guys. Like, this is not me. I did not do this. Like, I'm not Machiavellian that. But I don't know. They seem to be saying that a lot over the years. But whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Great.
it's a work of fiction.
Great movie.
Yeah, it's a. You know what? If you're gonna make a work of fiction about my life, let Sorkin write it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
make up whatever you want. You know what's nice too? I'll be like, listen, man, like he made it up. Like, it's cool. Like, this movie's great. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to do our hacking moments, or no,
Let's do
moments
it.
moments with people working on computers, right? Like,
Because this movie does, like, this movie is, should be on anybody's list of, like, I feel like people working on computers, again, is something that oftentimes is said to be boring in movies. Like, it's boring just watching people look at screens and type on a computer. In Social Network, it's exhilarating, and I agree. I think that there are other examples out there, and I'm glad that you brought this idea forward, because I looked at some fun examples of this happening in other movies.
yeah. So I went odd. So my first pick, I went with Zoolander. When Hansel
Yeah,
and Zoolander are slapping the computer,
the files are in the computer.
and they just start slapping it. Like, that's good hacking right there. Like, that's a good bit. So I had to
Mm,
include that. I had to include the Zoolander slapping on the computer.
amazing, amazing. Okay, so for me, one of my favorite people working on computers moments is a movie that we've referred to already, which is Limitless. So not only does he take a whole bunch of NZT and then bang out an entire novel in an afternoon, that scene is actually followed by him like tidying up his apartment and washing the dishes in a sink, which as kind of an OCD like neat freak is one of maybe my favorite scenes. If you ever want to do the top 5 people tidying up their apartment scenes, I'm totally down to do that sometime in the future as well. But then Limitless has 2 grades, so he bangs out his entire novel in one afternoon, and then later on there's some good stock trading happening too. He goes and rents a desk somewhere at a firm and has some good genius stock trading. So I really like Limitless for Bradley Cooper working at the computer.
'Cause the visuals and just the way he was smart typing, so that makes it more exciting because he's
All the words are
zooming.
floating
Yeah.
around him and stuff. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna do from Zootopia, Flash the Sloth typing on his little iPad, where he's just moving one finger really slow, and like just everyone's losing their minds and just ha ha ha. Ha. So yeah, Flash the Sloth from Zootopia, because it's cheeky and it's slow and it's hilarious. So yeah, I had to get Flash in there.
I like it. I like it. I'm gonna go back to kind of an oldie but a goodie. Mission Impossible 1.
You took one of mine.
Oh, descending in from the ceiling,
Yeah,
and then
dude.
the drop of sweat falls, and he has to does it or it's on the glasses, and then he catches it. Yeah, classic scene, amazing scene. The working on the computer is kind of I don't even remember exactly what it is that he's doing on the computer, but it's the acrobatics required to get to the computer. Imagine he like signed on there and like I don't know, it's like Zoom needs to update or something like that. Like I was complaining before we got onto this call that Zoom was taking forever to update. Imagine Ethan Hunt, he lowers in from the ceiling, he types in the password, and it's like, oh, sorry, you got to wait a couple minutes for these updates to install.
NSA needs to update.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's how you make it exciting, man. You know what's crazy? That's like my favorite moment in the Mission Impossible franchise, and he's just hanging by a computer. Like that's how you do. That's how De Palma does it. Like that's some good stuff. Okay, that was
Good
perfect.
stuff.
So I guess I'll do Sam Jackson in Jurassic Park, just because
Yep.
like what just
Hold on to your butts.
yeah, hold on your butts, and then just like there's another hacking scene in that movie too, but he gets locked out and then hold on to your butts and just like we're at 33%. It's just it's perfect. It's a perfect scene, and there's also good typing in Deep Blue Sea, but I was like, I'm gonna go with Jurassic Park, so I'm gonna take Sam Jackson typing.
Nice.
I just like Sam
Nice.
Jackson hacker, like that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. I always
One of the other things that I really like in movies is whenever we have like an assembled war room of people, so we're all surrounded by computers, and we're chasing after Jason Bourne, and we're watching him go through the streets, or we're launching a space shuttle, and we've got everybody in the control room in NASA, and we're cheering, or like the meteor breaks in half and everybody's high-fiving in Armageddon and that sort of thing. So that's sort of the general theme. I think most recently, like I rewatched The Martian again recently, and there's some really great. We're all in the control room, and he's driving the Land Rover, watching him on the screen, and we're trying to send him messages, and we're going back and forth communicating to Matt Damon while he's on Mars. So I'll go with The Martian for great working on computers.
Dude, Vikander does some great looking at computers in Jason Bourne.
Yes, she does. Yes,
And Ed
yes.
Harris does some good computer work in Apollo 13.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. We had to have a big board moment. I like
Yeah.
that. That's
Not just one person. I guess the difference, right? Instead of one person typing on a computer, I like a room full of people on computers.
I love it. That's a good pull. That's a really good pull. Since you took my Mission Impossible, I'm gonna take McCready in The Thing playing chess, and then he just
Okay.
pours scotch into it when he loses. Like he hits a couple buttons. It's 1982, and then just destroys it with some scotch, some blended scotch. That's a great computer scene.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. That's a
Right.
good poll. I like
Right.
it.
What's your last one? Oh, one of my students wrote a review for The Thing, and instead of looking up Kurt Russell's name, she just said the guy with the great hair.
Oh, nice.
That's
Okay.
so instead of calling him McCready or Kurt Russell, the guy with the great hair.
If
That made me
someone said the guy with the great hair and I didn't know who they were talking about, would I automatically think Kurt Russell? He's got to be like top five great hair category, right? Probably it is Kurt Russell.
yeah, who's gonna beat him? Keanu? Keanu does the long hair.
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson's bald. Jason
I,
Statham's bald.
I always like the theory that Mission Impossible movies depend. It's Tom Cruise's hair that's going to
Hair.
determine how high the things are that he's falling out of is largely determined by how long his hair is.
We should do a hair off. Kurt Russell versus Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
We should just do a
yeah.
really random episode where it's like Tom Cruise versus Kurt Russell, best cleanup scene, a hodgepodge episode.
The thing about long hair Tom Cruise is that when he's doing his Tom Cruise running, the Tom Cruise running is enhanced that much more
Yeah.
by the flying. Like you think about like Vanilla Sky, where he's running through the streets of New York and he's got super long hair in that movie. The Tom Cruise running is really enhanced by long hair Tom Cruise.
Mission Impossible 2 as well.
Right. Like we did Collateral. There's some great, a very long distance run in Collateral, but he's got the very short kind of gray hair. Might have been better if he had the Vanilla Sky hair in that movie.
You know,
But that would take away from the look though, because he's got the gray hair and the gray suit. So yeah, I don't know. It's a trade off.
You don't want gray long hair. That would look interesting.
No. Yeah, that might not work. He'd look like one of those guys from the Matrix 2.
Circular glasses on him and like just
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right,
my last pick is the first when you said to me we're gonna do a draft of movie scenes of people working on computers. This was the first scene that came to mind, and when I started looking, just doing a little bit of research and thinking of other ideas, so many people bagged on this movie, and it surprised me a little bit. It's been years since I've seen it, but this is one particularly memorable working on computer scene. Swordfish with Hugh Jackman.
that scene.
You know the scene. You know the scene. You know the scene I'm talking about. For those that haven't seen it, let's just say this guy's a really good computer hacker.
You know what's funny? The director's like hacking's boring, so we're just gonna add this element into it. It's so early 2000s. It's like
Very much.
It's like wildly early 2000s. Oh
aggressively early 2000s.
It's people go after Social Network, but watch Swordfish. But it's yeah, but you know what though? I remember early 2000s Mark watching it and be like, well, that's interesting. Like I've never seen that before.
Never seen that before. You've got 1 minute to hack into this mainframe. That's a high pressure situation. You've got a gun to your head while you're doing it. That adds to the pressure. How could we make this even more difficult? They find a way.
And one I want to include too is Hackers, because that's a movie I watched on VHS cassette, and just this the hacking, going into the world of what hacking was. Like I had to do a mid-90s hacking movie, like the net, because in Goldeneye, like hacking back then was huge in the 90s. So I had to include at least one hacking scene from the 90s. But dude, this was fun, man. Thanks for talking with me about it, like talking to me about it, and like I've never explored the extras of Social Network before, so I'm glad we did.
Yeah, absolutely, man. One of my favorite movies. Another one crossed off of the gigantic list that I sent you. That was probably like 3 or 4 years ago now that I sent you that list, which is crazy to me. But we've really made a lot of progress on that. What do we have coming up next?
Well, Last Samurai, I think that'd be fun.
Think that's the next one?
Yeah,
we were just talking about long hair Tom Cruise. So
okay. So we'll do, when we talk about Last Samurai, we'll do a Kurt Russell versus Tom Cruise, long hair, short hair.
Perfect.
Do you want to pick Tom Cruise and I'll pick Kurt Russell, or do we want to what do we want to do? Do we want to pitch a case?
I think here's what we got to do. Yeah. You got to do. So I'm trying to think about whether this will apply to Kurt Russell as much as it will to Tom Cruise. But we do like a snake style draft where you have to pick a long hair movie followed by a short hair movie.
I like
so
it.
I have to draft a long hair Tom Cruise movie followed by a short hair Tom Cruise movie, and you do a Kurt Russell draft, and we'll see what movies we can come up with that have both their long hair and their short hair.
So we'll have to do 6 each.
Yeah.
So 3 and 3, short, long. What about middle?
We'll have to talk this out. We'll have to see. We'll have to figure out like what constitutes long hair.
Tom Cruise in Ghost Protocol he is like middle, right? He's not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
we'll have to do. We'll talk about it.
we'll get to the bottom of this. We'll spend some real, some time really thinking about this at a very deep level.
And I will too, because I can't mess with Curdy Russ, man. Tom Cruise he's put a lot of money in my pocket, unbeknownst to him, for various
Mhm.
assignments. So I gotta make him proud. But this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure every time.
All right, so for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, and for Phil Briggs, this is Movie Shows and Flicks. We'll see you next week.